Good morning, everyone. My name is John Heerdink, and welcome to our Tribe Public CEO presentation titled Navigating the New FDA Era 2026 Strategic Priorities and the Future of Life Sciences. This webinar will be co-hosted by Stephen Ledger, CEO of Serina Therapeutics. They trade on the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange, under the symbol SER. Serina Therapeutics is a clinical stage biotechnology company advancing drug candidates enabled by its proprietary PAUSE platform, drug optimization technology. Serina is headquartered in Huntsville, Alabama, on the campus of the Hudson Alpha Institute of Biotechnology. Their website is serinatx.com. As many of you know, I'm the managing member of Tribe Public. Our website is tribepublic.com, Tribe public.com. Members from 31 plus countries in all 50 states have joined Tribe Public freely to gain direct corporate access to leaders and experts that they care about via our webinar events and via 41 venue sites across the US. From San Francisco, where I'm typically located. By the way, I'm in Indiana, Evansville, Indiana, where I was born, and visiting family and other tribe members this week. And we also know that we host community building, in-person lunch and dinner, and speaking engagements with local tribe members across the US, 41 venue sites. Tribe members, furthermore, are invited to submit names of experts and leaders of industry via our free wish list process at our website, adding names of companies and experts that they would like to meet to learn more. Please note that I'm also the managing director of Vista Partners LLC, a registered investment advisory firm in California, and its website is vistapglobal.com, VISTAP as in Paul, global.com. Please review both sets of disclaimers at each site and know that I'm currently a shareholder advisor to Serina Therapeutics. I'd also like to thank you all for participating and for all the questions you have submitted, and remind you that you may send in more questions via the Zoom chat feature during the event. A reminder that a video of this event will be published at our Tribe Public YouTube channel and will be sent out post this event via our Tribe This Week, our weekly e-newsletter that goes out at the end of each week, typically Friday. I want to thank Steve Ledger and to Serina Therapeutics for joining us today. And now let's get started. Hi, Stephen. Could you please tell us just a little bit about yourself and what brought you here today, and then let's go into your presentation.
Thanks, John, and thanks everybody for joining us. I'm going to just turn off my video because I've been having some glitches with bandwidth when I start the presentation. My background is as an investor in private and public growth companies. Being the CEO of Serina is a new career for me that started about 4 or 5 years ago when I met the company as I was looking to build a drug development platform company. And to make a long story short, the technology was so fascinating to me that I took it on as a project, as a capital advisor, to help them navigate the private funding markets and ultimately help them come public through a reverse merger and start to capitalize the company and commercially translate this extraordinary technology that the company had been building for years. I'm thrilled to be here again. I've done a couple events with John, and I found them to be, really a terrific way to connect with an audience that really cares about the patients, which is ultimately why we're all in this, in drug development. You don't sign up for this grind because you think you're going to make a lot of money. You sign up for it because you think you're going to make a difference. And having a platform company that can make a difference across multiple modalities is an extraordinary situation that Serina has in terms of an opportunity in front of them. So let's get into the presentation. Let me just turn off my video here and get into it. The prompt today really is to use our experience with our lead program, SER-252 for advanced Parkinson's, as a case study with respect to the new FDA and how to navigate the challenges that the new FDA has presented in terms of staffing and timelines as a real challenge, but also mapping into a philosophical change at FDA that is aligned with a patient-centric view of the world, and drug candidates that have a real patient, um, a real opportunity to relieve patient burden and relieve burden on the healthcare system overall. There seems to be a spirit of FDA of collaborating to get those candidates advanced as efficiently as possible. So it feels like a collaborative approach, practically and spiritually, to focus on real world clinical unmet need and a patient centric view to helping sponsors get to the data they need faster to fund the development programs that they're bringing to FDA. So I'll refresh everybody on what Serina is very quickly, and then talk about in more detail our engagement and the extraordinary alignment we ended up with FDA out of this collaboration. But as some of you may know, we are a platform technology. As a quick background, the technology platform is called poly-2-oxazolene. It is a polymer backbone. You should think about our proprietary technology as enabling challenging small molecules to be productized as a once-a-week subcutaneous injectable that can be self-administered. And our discovery model and development efforts are focused on already approved molecules where tighter control enabled by our technology of these already approved molecules, tighter control of the pharmacokinetics or PK profile over an extended period has differentiated benefits in terms of improving safety, compliance, adherence, or efficacy versus oral or other formulations or routes of administration of that approved molecule. So I'll skip through this very quickly. The takeaway here is compared to an oral once or twice a day dosing, very phasic peak and trough of hitting Cmax or overtreated, then undertreated, having to dose again. A once a week injectable where we can keep a near zero order release of drug is a potential paradigm change for certain indications. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. What's different about today's FDA? I touched on a little bit in the introduction. The FDA sponsor relationship, we found there really is a benefit to earlier engagement and a collaborative approach, patient-centric. FDA is open to flexible trial designs that can be more efficient from a time and cost standpoint. This does require a higher bar and more time invested with the agency in planning, a need to invest up front in bringing to that pre-IND engagement a flexible, mapped out in advance strategy where as the data comes in, you can pivot or get aligned with a more efficient path potentially to that primary endpoint data that we all need to see that an asset or product's approvable. And there clearly is a focus on making trials more efficient for the sponsor. You have to come into the game with a really robust package. But if you do that and you're focused on indications where there's your product profile, your target product profile clearly reduces patient caregiver burden and potential healthcare system downstream costs, you have a case to be heard by the agency. So our lead asset, to remind everybody, is for advanced Parkinson's. We have the potential to bring to market a best-in-class first-line therapy for advanced Parkinson's. 10 million sufferers worldwide. It is, and that number is growing by 2% a year. And ultimately, every one of these patients ends up as an advanced patient. There are no disease-modifying therapies on the horizon to change the inevitability of this disease. Apomorphine is an approved molecule for the treatment of Parkinson's. It is actually, many KOLs and subject matter experts believe it's a better molecule than levodopa-carbidopa, which is the standard of care, has been the standard of care in Parkinson's for 50 years. But adoption of apomorphine in its current formulations or form factors or route of administration has been very challenging in turning it into a successful clinical and commercial product. Our technology solves for those limitations. This is a visual of the patient journey. Ultimately, all of those patients end up in the orange box here, where their symptoms are inadequately controlled by their levodopa carbidopa, which they may be taking, 3, 4, 5, 6 years into the journey, 8 to 10 times a day, oral dosing. There are some adjunctive therapies, oral adjunctive therapies that can also help certain patients, but ultimately every patient ends up where their symptoms are inadequately controlled, and they become candidates for continuous dopaminergic control. And the products that have emerged in that space, the approved products, I've listed here, and I'll show you what those products look like. Deep brain stimulation, for example, is a $2 billion a year market. About 7,000 patients opt for that. The screening friction is high because of comorbidities, and it has a mortality rate of about 1%, and it doesn't work well for many, many patients. The other products I'll show you here, and this is where our product will enter the market in this phase, but we believe it has an earlier potential intervention or role to play in the therapeutic journey of these patients. Just to size that population, just in EU4 plus UK, US, that's 250,000 patients whose symptoms are inadequately controlled on the current standard of care. And that current standard of care for these patients, when nothing else is working for them, these are the products that they have available to them outside of deep brain stimulation. Duopa was the first product to be approved at about 500 plus million in peak sales in 2021. It's probably still in the $400–500 million range. Vyalev is AbbVie's follow-on product, a less invasive product, but still a product where the patient has to wear a pump during their waking hours to continuously infuse the carbidopa levodopa, the actual dopamine. And the patient has to take that pump off at night, so they wake up in a functional off state where they have to be rescued by the drug, and it's an invasive product in terms of the patient is reminded every day that they've got this device, they have to program it. Typically involves a caregiver, and it's got significant side effect profiles related to skin reactions, where the infusion site has to be continuously moved and treated. When the approval of Anapgo from Supernus, which is the only therapeutic apomorphine product approved in the US, that dictated a pivot in our regulatory strategy, which we'll talk about. That drug was approved in February of 2025 as an infusion therapy, as a pump. And I'll show you our target product profile that would compete with that. And the fact that this drug was approved after 2 complete response letters, clinical holds on their program over many years, is a testament to the fact that there's a significant unmet need, and this molecule has a role to play in the space. This is an example of the skin reactions that came from apomorphine in the Supernus clinical trial. Our technology dials that out because the apomorphine doesn't get released from the backbone till it's in the plasma. So there's no sub-Q compartment irritation with our technology. And that's a very important limitation of apomorphine in this form factor as a commercial product. That being said, the analysts believe Anapgo is a $300–400 million product in the US, even with these limitations, because of the limited options these patients have. And here's a chart of analyst projections for these drugs out over the next 4 or 5, 6 years. It will be a $2 billion plus category that we think, if our product is approved, can garner the majority of that market share. Here is our product. It is not an infusion product. It's an injection. Patient wears this once to twice a week, depending on their dosing requirement. And they push the button after loading the drug. And the patient can do this when they're in an on state themselves. And they wear this device for 10 to 15 minutes once or twice a week. So it is not a continuous infusion. It is a large volume of drug that we have to get into the sub-Q compartment, then immediately into the plasma, where our technology then slowly releases it and allows the patient to stay in a functional on state 24/7 for 3.5 days or longer. So the KOLs and subject matter experts who know this product are the PIs and KOLs that know all the other products, and they believe this approach will really resonate with clinicians and patients. The size of the market is significant for this asset. So let's talk about what ANAPCO opened up in terms of opportunity for Serina to get innovative in terms of our thinking with the agency on a regulatory pathway. There's a regulatory pathway called a 505(b)(2) NDA pathway, and we adopted this regulatory framework for a conversation with the agency, and it's never really been used to advance a novel platform for a novel chemical entity or an NCE. And that's what posylation of an older molecule, an approved molecule, does create. The IP is novel. It gets novel IP protection. And we had to get the agency to look at it like a prodrug approach, which is the typical path that that sponsors have taken on a 505(b)(2) NDA pathway. So we had an extraordinary meeting after a lot of back and forth with the agency back in August, where they aligned with this approach. And this approach enabled us to have our phase 1b SAD/MAD study, which we finally got cleared through the agency last week, and we are cleared to go and start our clinical trial after 3 months of staffing-related delays at FDA and questions around protocol of the study design. And again, building in that flexibility to pivot was integral in getting this IND over the finish line. What ANAPCO's approval did was it gave us a listed drug to bridge to use that data, that safety and efficacy data, to design our program, our regulatory program, and our clinical program to prove that we could be equivalent in terms of efficacy and safety to this drug that was just approved. And that's the bar that you have to hit on the 505(b)(2) NDA approach. And we believe that this extraordinary alignment with the agency is early validation of our business model, which is essentially posylation as a 505(b)(2) NDA pipeline in a platform. So what is a 505(b)(2) NDA pathway? It's been around for 40 years. It was introduced under Hatch-Waxman, and it allows sponsors to rely on existing data. In our case, the ANAPCO data, their clinical trials, their real-world evidence, open-label safety studies subsequently. So there's a lot of safety data on apomorphine. We don't have to own that reference data. And so what we have to do is design a study that bridges to the PK of that product and demonstrates our safety of our approach. So the regulatory approach was designed so that drug developers weren't penalized for improving existing products, right? And that's really what this is about, improving existing products. And we have a platform to do that across multiple areas in the small molecule landscape. Applications have historically been reformulations, new dosing regimens, alternative routes of administration. We bring some of that and much more in terms of our novel polymer platform that attaches to these molecules. Key advantages are speed, and that translates into cost. But probably the primary takeaway is that this asset, this molecule, is essentially clinically de-risked. It's been in humans. Its efficacy and safety is well known. So you're starting with a molecule that doesn't have the typical clinical risk of a typical drug development approach, where the probabilities are against you in terms of approval odds and chances of success when you're dealing with novel chemical entities and a novel mechanism of action, a first-in-class approach. Our business model is much different in looking at these existing approved molecules and moving them into a form factor with our polymer technology and making them better products. The advantages of the 505(b)(2) in terms of cost and time don't come at the expense of exclusivity, market exclusivity, because our posilated approach to these molecules is an NCE by definition with the agency and the patent office. We get the full 5-year market exclusivity as a traditional 505(b)(1) pathway. So obviously the compressed timelines save cost. We haven't publicly disclosed the cost of bringing SER-252 to an NDA submission, but it is in this, 25 to 300 million, a ballpark. And we will be providing more detail around that as we become more active in our investor relations campaigning now that we have this IND clearance. And we have something concrete to talk about, and we are now a clinical company again. So the value proposition I've sort of weaved into the conversation. It really is a focus. Our discovery is focused on, does our technology really enable clinical differentiation, right? And it's pretty clear in the case of SER-252 in Parkinson's versus, this invasive product that the patient has to wear 16 hours a day. It's efficacious, but it comes with a patient and caregiver burden that we're able to dial out. And so you should think about our pipeline of prospective molecules as very, very focused on clinical differentiation. Where can our technology make a difference of a once-a-week sub-Q approach and a controlled PK profile? Where does that have significant clinical benefit in dialing out side effects, improving adherence or compliance, where that is a challenge in certain patient populations and certain indications in neurodegeneration and neuropsych, primarily is where we're focused. And we'll have a lot more to talk about, going forward this year. The development process, as I suggested, you have to have a reference listed drug. You have to you'd be going against comparing yourself head to head versus an approved drug, and we have that in NAPCO. You have to bring a robust CMC package to the agency, and trial design, and all the bridging studies. And the goal is to get to an NDA submission in as efficient a timeline and as efficient a cost of development point as you can. And that's the way we've designed this program. Again, our business model is to start with clinically de-risked candidates. We've talked about apomorphine today. We won't talk about tetrabenazine for tardive dyskinesia. We've got an undisclosed molecule that we're super excited about. It is in the CNS space, and we hope to announce that at some point, in the first half of this year, hopefully, as we identify a lead candidate to take into IND-enabling studies. But obviously, we have a platform opportunity, and there aren't any great platform companies out there in the small molecule world. So thanks, everybody, for your time, and I'm going to come back on camera. John, over to you. John, you're on mute.
Apologize, everyone. Wanted to make sure you didn't hear me during his presentation, but thanks again, Stephen, for presenting today. We've got some questions lined up, and then I just remind anyone that you can submit something comes to mind further. We'll try to address it today and or get Stephen back in the future or out to one of the events here in the country as we move forward. But let me avoid delay by just going into these first questions here. So the first one is, what did you learn from Serina's most recent FDA interactions that surprised you?
One of the biggest surprises is I think I referred to it briefly in the presentations, how much time the FDA now spends on the overall patient experience. Whereas, prior engagements really seem to have a heavy emphasis, and there's still obviously heavy emphasis, but on data efficacy. It was really all data driven and less about the overall patient experience, about relieving patient burden. They asked very direct questions of like how many, clinic visits will be saved by, your approach. What does this look like for a working caregiver or someone with mobility issues? And so that conversation aligned very well with our trial design, which is focused on reducing patient and caregiver burden in real life, as you can see by our product profile. In our recent SCR 252 IND clearance, we saw an FDA that is more iterative, data-driven, flexibility, willing to engage early around both the molecule and the delivery technology, rather than treating the polymer and drug as separate sequential questions or studies being required. So that alignment led to the extraordinary result at our pre-IND meeting in getting this 505(b)(2) alignment.
Got it. Well, thank you. Here's another question. In what concrete ways are the new FDA's expectations around patient-focused drug development and real-world evidence changing how you design CNS trials at Serina?
Practically, our teams, ClinOps and medical affairs and regulatory, practically those teams engage patient groups and site investigators, primary investigators, subject matter experts, key opinion leaders earlier towards a goal of walking into FDA meetings with a fully vetted patient-centric endpoint strategy that's already been pressure tested in the field. That is very different in terms of how Serina thinks about our discovery process on developing molecules. We've kind of flipped it on its end, whereas the company used to look at, well, what molecules can we actually postulate from a chemistry standpoint? Now we flipped that discovery engine over to where can our technology, that product profile that we showed you, that tight PK profile over a once a week single injection, where can that really make a difference? And so that patient-centric endpoint strategy, already pressure tested in the field, leads to a much richer, more collaborative discussion and alignment with the agency's priorities.
Thank you, Stephen. The next question is, what does this new FDA era mean for speed and risk in drug development?
I alluded to some of the forward-thinking sort of aspects of the new FDA. Importantly, the new environment doesn't mean the bar is lower, but it does mean we can move smarter, and the agency feels like a partner in this. Are there ways to do things smarter, more efficiently? And really, this was the basis for our approach on SCR 252. The new FDA is more open to flexible trial designs where you're not locked in necessarily to a SAD or MAD protocol, but where if you have an understanding, if you see certain data early in that trial design, you may be able to pivot to another approach that will give you the next data set faster and more efficiently. In other words, you've seen enough. And so, but it also means that, and obviously this still has to be well supported in terms of protecting patients. But if you have no safety signals and you're seeing the efficacy signals that you want to see, the PK signals that you want to see, you may not need to run the full 40 patients or whatever your N is on your trial. You may be able to pivot to that next stage of getting that data that we all need to see earlier. So, but it does mean you need to invest more time up front in planning and be really more engaged collaboratively with the agency. So you don't need to make costly protocol changes later, costly in terms of time and expense.
Yeah, it would seem that as this gets proved out, that this could be very interesting to big pharma because of the platform nature. You gave me an example in one of our conversations about Teva. Could you speak to that to the tribe here?
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons, and you know, if the folks on the call don't know the background of the Serina Scientific founders, they invented a drug optimization technology for large molecules, for proteins, peptides, aptamers, known as pegylation. Pegylation is the most successful platform technology in optimizing those molecules, those larger molecules. It's led to 32 NDA approved drugs over 3 decades, 150 billion cumulative revenue. The scientific founders saw the opportunity in small molecules that they saw in large molecules. Pegylation doesn't work well with small molecules. And so the idea around founding Serina was there were no good small molecule optimization platforms to solve for challenging small molecules with low oral bioavailability, insolubility, very short half-lives. And there still aren't any great small molecule platforms. One of those small molecule platforms that emerged about 10 years ago was called deuterium chemistry. And it was a prodrug chemistry platform, not as elegant, anywhere near as elegant as our approach. But it led to the acquisition of the company Auspex that invented that technology by Teva in 2017 for $3.5 billion. And that acquisition led to the approved drug known as Austedo, Teva's Austedo, for a movement disorder called tardive dyskinesia. And our second asset that we've announced is a posylated version of that core molecule, that active moiety in Austedo. So one clinical asset that last year did evolve to a approved product and 1.6 billion in revenue last year for Austedo more than justified the $3.5 billion purchase price of Auspex, even though no other clinical assets emerged out of that platform, which demonstrated how challenging it is, to build a standard small molecule platform that is rinse and repeat, right? Where you don't have to change the platform technology. So, we think there's a super exciting opportunity with, again, POS as a enabling a pipeline in a platform.
Thank you. Well, I know we've gone a little bit over time, but I want to just remind everybody that Serina Therapeutics. It trades on the New York Stock Exchange under the symbol SER. And I'd also like to remind everyone if that's on here and beyond, if when you see the video published at our YouTube, if you have interest in meeting Serina Therapeutics CEO Stephen Ledger here at one of our events across the country, then please let us know through the wish list process or just ping us at events@tribepublic.com, and we'll do our best to try to arrange that. Again, these are corporate sponsored events where you get to meet and ask the questions that come to mind and really meet the CEOs behind these exciting companies. I would say, Stephen, is there any last words that you'd like to share or before we sign off today?
No, I just want to thank you, John, and thank everybody for their time. And I look forward to continuing the conversation with you all down the road.
Definitely. And we look forward to having you back. Again, if you have any questions, any thoughts, want to add Serina to your wish list, just either get us at tribepublic.com or me directly. I'll find that events@tribepublic.com. And many of you have my number that I've been interacting with for years. Again, thank you for your time, your effort, and look forward to your participation. And I look forward to any questions you might have about Serina Therapeutics. I'm happy to address a thing or maybe help you find that information that you're seeking. Again, thank you all. Thank you, Serina Therapeutics. Thank you, Stephen. And good luck here, and exciting times after this advance with the FDA. And thanks for sharing this new FDA era with us. I think it's going to open up a lot of people's eyes to this process. So really thank you for helping educate us today. So all the best. Have a great week, and look forward to hearing from you all.